wager, shall we?
The city of New York sparkled that evening like a living jewel. On the 42nd floor of the Aurora Skyline Lounge, an elite rooftop restaurant reserved for the ultra-rich, laughter and luxury mingled in the air. Waiters in sleek uniforms moved with ballet-like precision, balancing trays of wine and caviar. Every inch of the restaurant screamed money, from the marble floors imported from Italy to the chandeliers that shimmered like captured stars. Among the staff gliding through the glow was Ava Johnson, a young black woman in her mid-20s. She wasn't the kind of person who drew attention. She preferred quiet efficiency over loud presence. Her deep brown skin glowed under the amber lights, and her calm eyes reflected both grace and mystery. She carried herself with the discipline of someone who had learned to survive in rooms that didn't expect her to belong. Ava had a secret life, one invisible beneath the black and white uniform she wore every night. Years ago, she had been a linguistic scholar at Columbia University, fluent in 7 languages. Her world had been filled with books, dreams, and purpose, until life's storm took it all away. When her mother fell gravely ill, Ava left her PhD midway to care for her. Medical bills piled up, opportunities vanished, and soon, survival meant waiting tables for people who would never. Guess who she once was? That night, fate was waiting. At a corner table overlooking the glittering city sat Charles Whitmore, the billionaire CEO of Whitmore Global Investments. He was known not just for his wealth, but for his arrogance. People said he believed in 2 things, money and winning. To him, everyone else was a number, a tool, or entertainment. Around him were 5 executives laughing like they owned the skyline. The group had just sealed a $200 million merger, and their intoxication wasn't just from the champagne, it was from power. When Ava approached with her notepad and polite smile, Charles barely acknowledged her. He didn't need to. To him, she was part of the furniture, useful, silent, forgettable. "Good evening, gentlemen," she greeted softly. "May I take your order?" One of the men, already tipsy, chuckled. "Charles here's got to fly to Beijing next week for that big presentation, right?" Charles smirked, adjusting his cufflinks. "Yeah, though my Mandarin is, well, let's say not my strongest asset, but that's what translators are for." The men laughed. Another added, "You ever tried learning it?" Charles shrugged. "Why would I? I pay people who already know it. That's how the world works. You hire, not learn." The group roared with laughter. Ava stood silently, pen in hand, pretending not to hear, but her jaw clenched slightly. She'd heard conversations like this before, conversations where privilege mocked curiosity. Then one of the executives, the youngest one, perhaps trying to impress, smirked at Ava. "I bet even our waitress knows more Chinese than you, Charles." Charles raised an eyebrow, finally looking at her. "Oh, really?" he said, his tone playful but sharp. "You think she can speak Chinese?" He gestured toward Ava like one might gesture toward a painting. The laughter at the table softened into expectation. Ava took a slow breath. She wasn't angry. Not yet. Just tired. She had been underestimated all her life, and this was just another test she didn't ask for. Charles reached into his wallet, pulled out a sleek black card, and placed it on the table. "Let's make this fun," he said, his voice dripping with challenge. "If you can say 1 full sentence in Mandarin, just 1. I'll tip you $500. If you can hold a real conversation, I'll make it 5,000. But if you can impress me, truly impress me, I'll put $500,000 on it." The restaurant went silent. Even the pianist stopped mid-song. Eyes turned. Phones began to record. Ava looked at the card, then at Charles. For a moment, time slowed. She thought of all the nights she'd spent studying under dim lights, the lectures she had once given, the sacrifices she'd made to survive. Then she smiled faintly, not in arrogance, but in quiet confidence. She straightened her back and said in perfect Mandarin, 您以为金钱可以买到一切，但尊重是您永远负担不起的东西。You believe money can buy everything, but respect is something you can never afford. The words fell like thunder. The table froze. The laughter died. Then Ava continued, switching flawlessly between Mandarin and Cantonese, quoting poetry, describing idioms, even reciting a line from the Tang Dynasty poet Li Bai. Her tone, pronunciation, and rhythm were flawless. Native speakers in the room turned in astonishment. Charles's smug grin faded. He was no longer the predator, he was the lesson. When Ava finished, she calmly placed her tray down and said in English, "Would you like me to translate your Beijing presentation for you, sir? I used to teach Mandarin at Columbia before my life changed." The silence was electric. Charles swallowed hard, pulled his checkbook, and scribbled quickly. He signed a check for $500,000, placed it on the tray, and said quietly, "You've earned it." He stood up and left the restaurant. As the door closed behind him, people erupted in whispers and applause. Phones captured Ava's quiet smile, a moment that would soon circle the globe. That night she walked home with tears in her eyes, not from victory but from finally being seen. Waitress destroys arrogant CEO in Mandarin bet. That headline spread across TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube like wildfire. Within 24 hours, it had over 25 million views. People across the world were cheering for the unknown waitress who had stood up to privilege with grace and intellect. News channels replayed her words. Talk shows discussed her composure. Chinese media praised her accent as native-level perfection. Ava had become a symbol, not just of brilliance, but of dignity. But behind the fame, Ava's world was spinning. Her phone exploded with notifications, interview offers, and sponsorship deals. Yet she still lived in the same one-room Harlem apartment, with the same flickering bulb and the same unpaid bills on her kitchen counter. The fame was both beautiful and terrifying. "I'm not used to this," she whispered to herself one night, scrolling through thousands of comments. Some messages made her smile. "You're my hero. You made me cry. You showed what real intelligence looks like." But others cut deep. "She's faking it. No way she learned Mandarin. Probably AI voice dubbing." That night, she made a video of her own. Sitting by the window with the city glowing behind her, she spoke directly to the camera. "My name is Ava Johnson. I studied linguistics at Columbia University. I speak 7 languages: Mandarin, Cantonese, Spanish, French, Yoruba, Japanese, and English. I am not a genius. I'm just someone who loves to learn, and someone who never stopped learning, even when life forced me to start over." The video went viral again. Universities reached out. Language schools offered partnerships. She was invited to TED Talks, podcasts, and educational platforms. And then came a message that froze her. "You embarrassed me in front of the world. Meet me at the Horizon Hotel, 7 p.m. tomorrow. C.W. Charles Whitmore." For a long time, she stared at the message. Every instinct told her to ignore it, but another voice, the one that whispered courage, told her to face it. At 7 p.m. sharp, she arrived. The hotel's lounge was dimly lit and silent. Charles sat at a corner table, no entourage, no arrogance, just a man with tired eyes. "You ruined my image," he said softly. "You made me a joke." Ava sat opposite him. "No," she said. "You did that yourself." He exhaled, then spoke again. "What if I told you I want to hire you? Head of Global Communications, $1 million a year. You'd be on my team, not against it." Ava blinked. She saw something new in him, not humility, but desperation. "Why me?" she asked. Charles leaned forward. "Because you have something I can't buy. Authenticity. People trust you. They hate me. I need you to help me rebuild what I lost." Ava stared at him. For a moment she remembered the humiliation, the laughter, the condescension. Then she smiled gently and said, "I don't rebuild arrogance, Mr. Whitmore. I rise above it." She stood, thanked him for the coffee, and walked out. He didn't follow. Outside, the city air was cold but freeing. Ava took a deep breath. For the first time in years, she didn't feel small. She felt powerful. 6 months later, Ava Johnson was no longer a waitress. She was the CEO of her own company, Linguistic, a global platform that offered free language education for underprivileged students worldwide. Her story had inspired millions. She had partnerships with universities, NGOs, and philanthropists. Her TED Talk, titled The Power You Speak, became one of the most viewed talks of the year. On the screen behind her, she told her audience, "People used to tell me knowledge has no color, but the world treated it like it does. I learned that real power isn't money, it's understanding. Understanding cultures, words, people. Language connects what prejudice divides." Her words struck hearts around the globe. Meanwhile, Charles Whitmore's empire was collapsing. Investors withdrew, brands distanced, and the board voted him out. For a man who once believed money could buy everything, losing his image meant losing his identity. One morning, Ava received a letter. It wasn't typed. It was handwritten, elegant, humble. "Dear Ms. Johnson, I lost more than money that night. I lost the illusion that I was better than others. You showed me that real wealth is the ability to learn, to listen, and to respect. Thank you for teaching me the only language I never spoke, humility. Charles Whitmore." Ava folded the letter, placed it in a small wooden box beside her desk, and smiled. That evening, she returned to the Aurora Lounge, now under new ownership, to attend a fundraiser. She stood near the same window where the city once looked down on her. Now, she looked at it as an equal. As she gazed out, her reflection shimmered against the skyline. Her voice, soft but firm, narrated in her mind. "They thought my silence was weakness, but silence was my language, the language of patience, strength, and grace. The world will always bet against you, but when you know your worth, even their arrogance becomes your applause." The music swelled. The city lights danced.